You've been outside 100 times, sat on a bench, stood by a feeder, maybe even crouched down trying to get close, and the birds, they looked at you, maybe tilted their head and flew away. But then there's that one person, you've seen them, standing completely still near a park trail, and somehow a chickadee just lands on their shoulder like it's nothing, like they were expected, like there was an agreement nobody told you about. What do they know that you don't? And I'm not talking about some old bird whisperer myth or a special gene some people are born with. I'm talking about something behavioral, something scientific, something you can actually start doing. And the moment you do, birds will begin responding to you in ways that will genuinely change how you see these animals forever. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you are going to understand something about bird cognition that most people, even lifelong birders, have never fully wrapped their heads around. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Let's start with the thing nobody talks about openly, and that's this. Birds are not ignoring you. They are evaluating you constantly. Every single second you are within their sensory range, they are running a calculation in their heads. And that calculation has one question at its core. Are you a threat? That's it. That's the whole game. Birds don't see humans the way we see each other. They don't read facial expressions the way mammals do. They don't smell fear the way a dog might. What they do, and they do this extraordinarily well, is read movement, silhouette, speed, and pattern. They are threat detection machines that have been running the same software for tens of millions of years, and that software is very, very good at its job. So when you walk into a yard and the birds scatter, it's not because they hate you. It's because something about what you did triggered a threat response, the way you moved, the direction you turned your head, the speed at which you approached. Something in your behavior matched a pattern that evolution has hardwired them to fear. Here's where it gets fascinating, though. That same system and that same hypersensitive threat detection machine is also capable of the opposite. It's capable of learning that a specific individual, a specific presence, a specific behavioral pattern is not only safe, but actually associated with something good. And when that association gets locked in, the bird's behavior changes completely. This is called individual recognition, and it is one of the most remarkable things happening in your backyard right now. In 2009, a team of researchers at the University of Washington ran a study that permanently changed how scientists think about bird intelligence. They wanted to test whether American crows could recognize and remember individual human faces. So they wore specific masks, some neutral, some with what they called a dangerous face, and they captured crows on campus as part of the research. They banded them, handled them, and released them. Then they went back out wearing those same masks. The crows remembered, not just for a few days, for years. Crows that had never even been captured themselves were scolding the dangerous face because the information had been passed through the flock socially. The crows had talked. They had warned each other. Now you might be thinking, okay, crows are known to be unusually intelligent. That's a special case. But here's what happened after that study. Researchers started asking the same question about other species: mockingbirds, magpies, robins. And the results were consistently striking. These birds weren't just reacting to humans as a category. They were responding to specific humans as individuals. A 2009 study on northern mockingbirds found that the birds could identify individual humans who had approached their nests, and that they began responding with escalating aggression specifically toward those individuals, while remaining calm around others who had never come near the nest. Think about what that means for a second. That bird looked at a human, remembered that human, stored that information, and retrieved it accurately when that specific human returned, in a world full of thousands of other humans walking by. That is not the behavior of a simple creature running on pure instinct. That is a cognitive process. And it means that every single interaction you have ever had with a bird near your home, every time you've walked past their nest, every time you've moved too fast, every time you've stared, they may have filed that away. You have a reputation. You just didn't know the system existed. So here's the uncomfortable question. What is your reputation? Most people, without knowing it, are coded as low-level threats. Not predators exactly, but unpredictable. And unpredictability is the enemy of trust in the bird world. Think about what typical human behavior looks like to a bird. You walk at inconsistent speeds. You stop randomly and look in different directions. You sometimes move toward them, sometimes away. You make unpredictable sounds. You're large. You move on two legs, which actually already puts you in a suspicious category, because very few natural predators of birds are bipedal, and you make movements that occasionally, accidentally, mimic the strike patterns of raptors. Even turning your head too fast triggers a startle response in small songbirds. The lateral eye movement of a hawk banking for a strike. That's what your quick head turn looks like to a bird whose entire nervous system is calibrated to avoid being killed from above. So the people who have birds landing on them coming close responding differently, what are they doing? They are being consistent. That is the word. Consistency. It is the foundation of everything. Let me break down exactly what this looks like behaviorally, because this is the part where things get very specific and very actionable. The first thing is movement cadence. Birds are extraordinarily sensitive to the speed and rhythm of movement. Slow, smooth, predictable movement is read as non-predatory. Think about how prey animals move. Quick, erratic, reactive. Think about how large, non-threatening animals move. Deliberate, consistent, unhurried. You want to be a large grazing animal to a bird, not a startled prey animal. When you move around birds, move like you have absolutely nowhere to be and zero interest in them specifically. Every movement smooth, no sudden accelerations, no abrupt stops. The second thing is gaze management. Direct eye contact with birds is almost universally read as predatory behavior. Almost every bird predator, hawks, owls, cats, snakes, fixates on prey with a direct stare before striking. When you stare directly at a bird, you are mimicking that exact behavior, and they know it. The people who attract birds don't stare at them. They use peripheral vision. They keep their body angled slightly away. They let their gaze move past the bird naturally rather than landing on it. You can watch a bird with incredible intensity while appearing to look at something 3 feet to its left, and the bird's response will be completely different. The third thing is what I'd call positional predictability. Birds that learn to trust specific humans do so in part because those humans behave consistently in space. They are always in the same spot at roughly the same time. They always approach from the same direction. They always stop at the same distance. The bird's brain builds a model of that person's behavior, and when reality matches the model, the anxiety response decreases. When you are random, sometimes here, sometimes there, sometimes close, sometimes far, you can never be modeled, and things that cannot be modeled are dangerous. The fourth thing, and this is the one that takes the longest but pays off the most, is association learning. Birds learn through reinforcement just like almost every other vertebrate. If your presence consistently predicts food, safety, and no negative outcomes, your presence becomes a positive stimulus. So this is not a trick, this is basic behavioral conditioning, and birds are exceptional learners. The people who have birds eating out of their hands didn't get there through some gift. They got there through hundreds of small positive interactions, each one shifting the bird's internal calculation slightly further toward trust. Now here is where I want to go deeper, because most content about attracting birds stops at the feeder tips and the seed recommendations. That's the surface. What's actually happening underneath is something much stranger and much more beautiful. Birds that form trust-based relationships with specific humans don't just stop being afraid of those humans. Their behavior actually changes in more complex ways. They start to use those humans as what researchers call a social referencing point. You've probably seen this with dogs. You're in an unfamiliar place, something slightly unsettling happens, and the dog looks at you. It's checking your reaction before deciding how to feel about the situation. That behavior and using a trusted individual as an emotional anchor turns out to be far more widespread in the animal kingdom than we thought. And birds do it too. Once a bird has built a sufficient trust history with a specific human, it will sometimes visibly check that human's behavior when something ambiguous happens in the environment. A strange sound, an unfamiliar object. The bird looks around, looks at you, looks back. This is not random. This is a cognitive process in which you have been assigned the status of known, trusted information source about the environment. That should genuinely give you pause. That is a wild animal treating you as a reliable reference point. That is millions of years of evolutionary distance collapsing because you were slow, consistent, and predictable enough that a creature with a 1 milliliter brain decided you were trustworthy. Let me talk about vocal communication for a moment, because this is an area where most people are operating in complete ignorance, and it is costing them a tremendous amount of richness in their outdoor experiences. Birds are talking constantly. And I don't just mean birdsong, I mean they are actively communicating information in real time about the state of their environment, about the presence of predators, about the discovery of food, about territorial boundaries, about individual identity. And if you learn to listen, really listen, not just hear, you can understand enormous amounts of what's happening around you. There are a few things worth knowing immediately. Contact calls versus alarm calls. Most small songbirds have two completely different vocal categories that serve opposite functions. Contact calls are short, soft, often high-frequency sounds that birds use to maintain awareness of each other while going about their day. They're saying, "I'm here, where are you, all clear." Alarm calls are categorically different, sharper, more urgent, often triggering a chain reaction through the whole bird community. When you hear sudden silence in a yard that was previously full of bird sound, that is actually an alarm signal too. Silence is data. Mobbing calls. When birds detect a perched predator, an owl, a hawk sitting still in a tree, sometimes even a domestic cat, they will often mob it. Multiple species will come together, make a specific type of harsh, repetitive call, and dive bomb the predator in an attempt to harass it into leaving. If you learn to recognize a mobbing event, you will be able to find owls and hawks that you would otherwise never see. Follow the noise, move slow, look for the thing every bird is looking at. The Doppler effect of birdsong. This one sounds strange, but it's real. When birds are alarmed or uncomfortable, the pattern of sound in an area changes spatially. Birds that are okay with your presence will sing close to you. Birds that are mildly alarmed will sing from a specific distance. And as you approach, you'll notice the sound staying approximately the same distance away, like you're moving through a field that keeps relocating around you. That distance, that's the bird's personal space boundary. It's called the flight initiation distance, and it varies by species, individual history, and the specific history that bird has with you. The birds who know you have a shorter flight initiation distance with you than with strangers. That gap is a measurable expression of trust. There's a moment that every serious birder has had at least once, and if you haven't had it yet, it is coming. You are standing outside, not doing anything in particular, being still, being quiet. And slowly, gradually, as though the world is recalibrating to your presence, you realize that birds have stopped accounting for you. A nuthatch is working its way down a tree 10 feet away, and it is not watching you. A pair of towhees is scratching in the leaf litter, and they keep drifting closer, not away. Something is moving in a shrub, and you go very still, and you wait, and a Wilson's warbler pops out at eye level 6 feet from your face and looks directly at you for one long second before hopping into the next branch like you are furniture. That moment is not an accident. It is the result of everything I've been describing: your movement, your stillness, your patience, your consistency over time in that space. The birds ran their calculation, they ran it again, they built a model. The model said non-threat, and they got back to living their lives. What you are experiencing in that moment is acceptance, not the kind you have to earn with words or behavior over years of social navigation. The primal, wordless kind, where a creature that has no reason to trust anything makes an exception for you based on evidence, is one of the quietest and most extraordinary things that can happen to a person. Here's something researchers have begun exploring that I think is going to completely reshape how people think about their local bird populations over the next decade. Individual birds have personalities, not metaphorically, literally. Measurable, consistent, replicable behavioral differences between individual birds of the same species that persist across time and context. The same way some humans are consistently bolder or more cautious than others, the same way individual dogs have personalities that don't change based on the situation. Birds show what scientists call behavioral syndromes, clusters of traits that stay consistent. Some individual great tits are explorers. They move into new environments quickly, investigate novel objects, take risks. Other great tits are avoiders. They approach new things slowly, hang back, wait for information before committing. These patterns are measurable from the time the birds are juveniles, and they predict behavior across completely different contexts. Why does this matter for you? Because it means that the bird at your feeder is not interchangeable with any other bird of the same species. Well, that specific animal has a specific personality, a specific history, a specific model of you. And when that bird comes back tomorrow, it is that individual again, bringing all of that accumulated experience to the encounter. Once you start thinking about your local birds as individuals, which they are, everything changes. You stop seeing a flock of house sparrows and you start seeing 12 or 15 specific animals with different behaviors, different ranks, different tolerances, different histories with you specifically. The backyard becomes a social world that you are actually part of, not just watching from the outside. I want to address something that comes up a lot when people start getting serious about this, and it's the question of whether feeding birds is actually helping them or creating a dependency that damages their survival skills. The research on this is genuinely more nuanced than either the pro-feeding or anti-feeding camps usually acknowledge. What we know is this: supplemental feeding does not appear to cause birds to abandon their natural foraging behavior. Studies have shown that even birds that visit feeders daily still get the majority of their calories from natural sources: insects, seeds, fruits, the things their beaks and digestive systems evolved to process. The feeder is a supplement, not a replacement. What supplemental feeding does do is provide a caloric buffer during critical periods, particularly winter and early spring breeding season, when natural food sources are scarce or exhausted. Studies in the UK found that supplemental feeding during winter measurably increased reproductive success the following breeding season. The birds came into spring in better condition, laid more eggs, fledged more chicks. The more significant concern is actually disease transmission at feeders, and this is something most people don't think about carefully enough. Dirty feeders concentrate birds in artificial ways and create conditions for pathogen transfer that wouldn't occur at natural food sources. The single most important thing you can do if you're maintaining feeders is clean them regularly. Scrub them with a dilute bleach solution, rinse thoroughly, let them dry completely before refilling. Do this at least every 2 weeks, more often during warmer months. Let me tell you about something that happens in the bird world that most people have no idea exists, and once you know about it, you will start seeing it everywhere. It's called heterospecific eavesdropping, and it means that birds of different species are actively listening to and interpreting the alarm calls of other species. When a white-breasted nuthatch hears a black-capped chickadee give a high-urgency alarm call, the kind they give for small, fast aerial predators like sharp-shinned hawks, the nuthatch responds. It takes cover. It goes quiet. It doesn't need to see the hawk. It doesn't need to run its own risk assessment from scratch. It trusts the chickadee's call. This is a cross-species communication network, a real-time environmental security system built from millions of years of coevolution between species that share the same spaces and the same threats. Chickadees actually encode information about the size and urgency of a predator in the structure of their alarm calls. More denotes in their chickadee call signals higher threat level, and other species have learned to pass that signal. The forest is full of conversation you couldn't hear before. Now you can. The people who birds seem to choose, who seem to have some rare, quiet gift, are not doing anything mystical. They have, consciously or not, learned to behave in ways that make biological sense to an animal running a threat detection system built over 60 million years of avian evolution. They move like non-threats, they look like non-threats, they behave consistently enough to be modeled, and they have spent enough time in specific places with specific birds that those individual animals have built trust-based associations with their specific presence. The beautiful thing about this is that it is completely learnable. It is a skill. And unlike most skills, the practice itself, the sitting still, the slow movement, the patient observation, the hours spent somewhere quiet enough that birds forget you're there, is its own reward before any bird ever comes close. There is a study I think about often. Researchers were looking at how urban birds in different cities respond to humans, comparing populations of the same species across environments with very different levels of human disturbance. What they found was not just that urban birds were bolder on average, though they were. They found evidence that in areas where humans had consistently behaved in non-threatening ways over time, the entire local population had shifted. The birds in those areas had shorter flight initiation distances, were more willing to forage near humans, and showed less cortisol response to human proximity. The behavior of the community of humans in a given area actually changes the birds living there. At the population level, across generations. Think about what you're actually doing when you go outside and you're slow and you're quiet and you're patient. You're not just building a relationship with individual birds. You're contributing to something larger. You're making your neighborhood slightly safer in the neural calculation of every bird that lives there. Your behavior is data in a system that is much bigger than any single interaction. So the next time you step outside, the next time you stand near a feeder or sit in a yard or walk a trail, try something different. Move like you have nowhere to be. Let your gaze slide past the birds instead of landing on them. Stop at a comfortable distance and stay there longer than feels natural. And notice, really notice, the sounds around you. The contact calls, the alarm calls, the change when silence falls. The moment when a bird that was watching you looks away and goes back to feeding. That last moment, that specific moment, that's the moment you want. That's the moment that means the threat assessment came back clean. The model accepted you. The calculation resolved in your favor. It is a small thing and it is an enormous thing at exactly the same time. And now you know what the people with birds on their shoulders know. If this was the kind of deep dive you're looking for, the real science, the real behavior, the stuff that actually changes how you see the natural world, then you already know what to do. The next one is already waiting for you.